Hello and welcome to another video. My name is George and I'm your host. Today, I'd like to talk about what it takes to fly your drone for a variety of purposes in Canada versus the US. I'm based in Canada, so my first-hand knowledge is with the regulations here. Comparing the rules for the United States, even just superficially, has revealed some key differences that you should be aware of if you're planning to take your drone on a cross-border trip from either side, north or south. In Canada, you do not need a license to fly a drone that weighs under 250 grams. In the US, however, you have to take the recreational UAS safety test, known simply as TRUST, and carry proof of it with you when you fly. The TRUST is free and online, and there are 16 different administrators for that. There are some links in the description if you'd like to know more. Certain rules for flight operations apply, and they're similar to the Canadian ones. For example, you have to fly within visual line of sight. Do not exceed 400 feet in altitude and stay away from manned aircraft, and so on. In Canada, some of those rules aren't enforced in the same manner. They're just best practice guidelines, but operators are still responsible for the consequences of their flights. However, you can fly a mini drone over people, outside of visual line of sight, and even within controlled airspace. What you cannot do is fly within restricted Class F airspace, which includes things like military installations and prisons. You also have to comply with restrictions given in NOTAMs, or Notices to Airmen. Problem is, someone who goes out and buys their first ever DJI mini drone may not even know about any of this. Fortunately, the DJI Fly app has some warnings and restrictions, and generally will not allow the drone to take off in restricted areas. However, the app does not keep track of NOTAMs and may not always have all the information. My point is, it's highly recommended to do some reading about the aviation regulations that apply to drone or RPAS operators. While it's a good thing to have fewer rules, reckless operation is still prohibited, and anyone who attempts to fly a drone needs to have a basic understanding of what that even means. There are more differences when it comes to operating drones that weigh over 250 grams. On either side of the border, those need to be registered. In Canada, you need a license to fly them. As of today, there are 2 levels of licensing. For the basic one, the exam is online and it costs $10. There are 35 questions. The time limit is 90 minutes and the passing score is a minimum of 65% correct answers. Passing this test is all you need to fly recreationally and even commercially, of course within the boundaries of the basic license. You're not allowed to fly in controlled airspace, within a close range of any heliports or aerodromes, and you have to keep 30 meters away from bystanders, horizontally. Under no circumstances can you fly directly over them. The advanced license gives you more privileges, like flying within controlled airspace and flying close to or even directly above bystanders, depending on your type of drone. However, that license isn't so easy to come by. There's also an online test, very similar to the basic one. This one, however, has 50 questions and the time limit is only 60 minutes. You have to get 80% correct answers to get past this hurdle. At this point, you're not done. You also have to demonstrate your ability to actually fly the drone and plan a flight mission, considering all aspects of legality and safety. There's an in-person flight review for this, conducted by a licensed flight reviewer. For foreign pilots, there's also a requirement for a special flight operations certificate to fly advanced operations. In the US, the trust only gives you the right to fly for recreational purposes. Anyone who uses their drone for business, even if it's just stock footage or a YouTube channel like this one, you need a Part 107 license. The test for that can be taken at an FAA test center. It consists of 60 questions and there's a 2-hour time limit. It seems like the exam is quite different from the Canadian one. Maybe not so much regarding the content, but you actually have to show up in person. As far as I'm aware, reference material is not allowed during the exam, but there's no actual flight review. If you've taken the Part 107 exam, which I have not, please correct me in the comments if I'm wrong about anything in this video. Now, let's just summarize what the main differences are between Canada and the US when it comes to drone operation. In Canada, you're allowed to fly your sub 250 gram drone without any kind of license and very few restrictions. The advisories for micro drone pilots begin with "you should," so they're not actually enforced. You can even do commercial work with your sub 250 gram drone. This can be a huge plus for someone who wants to get into drone photography, perhaps to test the waters, or those who need footage for YouTube. It also means that there'll be some ignorant people who disregard all safety recommendations, in part because they haven't been convinced to learn about them in the first place. In the US, anyone wanting to fly at all needs to take the trust. Since it's free, supposedly easy, and online, this actually seems like a really good idea. For drones up to 25 kilos, Canadians need a license, either for basic or advanced operations. The difference is more about where you can fly rather than about what you can do. Again, you can do commercial work with your drone regardless of what license you have. Drones over 250 grams also need to be registered with Transport Canada, but there's no need for any kind of remote ID. In the US, drones over 250 grams also have to be registered, and as of earlier this year, they must also have remote ID. A trust is all you need to fly for recreational purposes. However, once you fly drones for money, you must have a Part 107 license. Foreigners can take the Part 107 test and become licensed to fly commercially in the US. For Americans coming to Canada, this is also the case, except when it comes to advanced operations. In that case, they need to apply for so-called SFOC with Transport Canada, in addition to obtaining the advanced license. I hope this video answers some of your questions. My knowledge about the Canadian licenses is firsthand, but I only just started researching the US licensing requirements. Maybe I'll try to pass my Part 107 someday. In the meantime, it's a good idea to acquire the necessary knowledge, much of which is similar on either side of the border. In short, become interested in all aspects of aviation, and either test will be easier to pass. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video and give it a thumbs up. Next time, I'll be weighing the pros and cons of getting your basic Canadian RPAS license. Would you like to see that? Well, then subscribe. And I'll see you really soon.